The year was 1865. The war barely ended, though no man on this frontier seemed to know it. Peace was a rumor whispered back east, but out here the law was a threadbare coat, patched and torn, worn by whoever had the strongest fist to claim it. The little town of Dry Creek lay sprawled along the wagon road, its main street a strip of dust lined with wooden saloons, a trading post, and a jail where the sheriff's star shone dull as a tarnished coin. On this afternoon, the air buzzed with voices, rough laughter, the reek of sweat and whiskey. But it was the sharp crack of a gavel, carried on the dry wind, that pulled men together like wolves circling a kill. The auction block stood in the center of town, a crude platform hammered together from pine boards already gray with dust. A hand-painted sign hung from a post, letters big enough even the half-blind could read. Auction today. A crowd pressed in, boots grinding grit, spurs jangling, hats pulled low to shield eyes burning with want. Some carried rifles slung across their shoulders, others kept knives at their belts, but all shared the same lean, hungry look. They had not come for cattle, nor for horses. They had come for people. Elias McGraw reigned in his sorrel, gelding at the edge of the crowd. He sat high in the saddle, hat brim low, the leather of his duster creaking as he shifted. His face bore the marks of both time and war. Creased at the corners, jaw rough with the day's stubble, one cheek drawn by an old scar that caught the light when he turned his head, his eyes gray as iron nails, swept the crowd with a soldier's caution. He hadn't planned on stopping in Dry Creek longer than it took to water the horse and fill his canteen, but the sound of that gavel had rooted him. Something in it carried the ring of memory, court-martials, blockades, the sharp finality of judgments no man could take back. On the platform stood two figures, women. Their dresses hung in tatters, bright silks worn thin by dirt and travel, yet still bearing the patterns of their homeland. Delicate blossoms stitched across the fabric, now dulled by dust. One wore pink with faded cherry blooms, the other green with cranes stitched in gold thread. They stood side by side, bound at the wrists, dark hair tangled, eyes lowered, as if refusing to see the faces leering up at them. The younger girl trembled, her shoulders small, fragile as a sparrow's. The older kept her chin high, though her lips pressed tight, defiance warring with fear in every line of her. "Too fine, workers here," the auctioneer bellowed, a man with a red face and whiskers that hid most of his mouth. He stood tall, arm lifted high, a voice trained to cut through storm and gunfire alike. Brought all the way from the coast, hardy and obedient. They'll fetch good coin, mark my words. Who'll start us at $1? The crowd chuckled, the laughter low and ugly. A miner with a torn shirt spat in the dust. $1? I'll give you that for the small one, she can sweep my floor. A rancher shouted higher. Another called out something worse, and the crowd broke into jeers. The gavel slammed down again. $1 to start, gentlemen. Don't be shy. These two'll work harder than any pair you'll find. Elias swung a leg over and dropped from his horse. His boots struck the dirt with a thud that cut through the noise. He didn't know why he moved, only that something had tightened in his chest, a knot he couldn't ignore. The war had taken too much from him already. Brothers in arms, a sense of purpose, even his faith in justice. And now here, in this spit of a town, men laughed over women sold like cattle, as if the war's lesson had never been learned. His hand went to the leather pouch at his belt, heavy with coins earned driving cattle south. He hadn't planned to spend them here, but plans meant little when conscience rose. $5, Elias called, his voice flat, carrying across the crowd. The laughter died. Heads turned. The auctioneer blinked, then grinned wide, greedy. $5. We've got $5. Who'll make it $10? The miners muttered, casting looks at Elias, then at one another. No one raised a hand. $10 could buy a man a good horse or enough whiskey to drink himself blind for a week. No one was fool enough to waste it on two women whose fate most believed already sealed. The silence grew heavy, broken only by the restless shuffle of boots. 10, Elias said. The auctioneer's gavel came down with a crack. Sold. $10 for both. Step right up, mister, and claim your purchase. The crowd grumbled, some cursing under their breath, others spitting in disgust. One man, red-eyed with drink, muttered loud enough for all to hear, "Fool cowboy, wasting good coin on scraps." His friends laughed, though their laughter rang hollow. Elias ignored them. He climbed the platform, his boots hollow on the boards, and laid the pouch heavy with coins into the auctioneer's palm. The man weighed it, teeth flashing in a satisfied grin, then waved Elias toward the women. "Yours, then. Take M." The younger girl flinched as Elias approached, her wrists trembling against the rope. The elder stood firm, eyes fixed on him at last, dark eyes, sharp as obsidian, searching his face for some sign of intent. Elias pulled a knife from his belt. The crowd leaned forward, expectant, but with one swift motion he cut the rope binding their wrists and let it fall to the boards. "You're free," he said quietly. The elder's eyes widened, though her face stayed composed. The younger gasped, staring at her wrists as if the rope had been part of her flesh. Elias shrugged out of his duster and draped it across their shoulders, a small shield against the staring eyes below. He gestured toward his horse. "Come on. Time we were gone." They followed, silent, slipping down from the platform. The crowd parted with mutters, some spitting in the dirt as they passed. A few men stepped forward as if to block their way, but one look into Elias's cold eyes set them back. He swung onto his horse, the women walking close at his side. Together they rode out of town, the weight of 100 stairs burning into their backs, until Dry Creek was nothing but a smear of dust on the horizon. They made camp that night by a trickle of creek water beneath a sky ablaze with stars. Elias tended the horse, stripped saddle and bridle, while the women huddled by the fire he built from dry mesquite. He brought water in his hat, held it out. The younger girl drank greedily, water spilling down her chin, while the elder took it slow, careful. They said nothing. Elias studied them in the flicker of firelight. "My name's Elias," he said at last. "Elias McGraw. And you?" The elder lifted her gaze. Her voice was low, accented, carrying the weight of words carefully chosen. "May." She touched her chest lightly. Then her hand moved to the girl beside her. "Lien, my sister." Elias nodded. "You folks? Family out here?" May shook her head once. "No family." Her eyes slid toward the fire, shadows dancing across her face. The silence stretched. Coyotes howled far off, the sound lonely, mournful. Elias leaned back against his saddle, eyes narrowing. He'd done his good deed, bought freedom with coin that could have fed him months. Yet something gnawed at him. The way May's eyes guarded secrets, the way Lien clung to her sister's sleeve as if the world might tear them apart at any moment. He'd seen fear before, but this was something deeper, something they weren't saying. They didn't sleep long before trouble found them. Near midnight, the horse's ears pricked, a low whicker sounding in the dark. Elias rolled from his blanket, hand on the colt at his hip. The fire was down to coals, throwing just enough light to catch shapes moving between mesquite shadows. Drunken laughter drifted in. Figures emerged. 4 men, faces half hidden, blades glinting in the faint light. "Well, looky here," one slurred, stepping forward. "Our generous cowboy and his pretty prizes." The women stiffened. Lien whimpered, May pressing her close. Elias rose slow, calm as stone, revolver steady in his hand. "Keep moving," he said. "Ain't nothing for you here." The men laughed. One spat in the dust. Another twirled a knife, grinning through broken teeth. "You think we'll let you walk off with both?" "Not hardly. Share's fair. Hand 'em over or we cut you down." The air tightened, firelight snapping sharp shadows across the men's faces. Elias's finger brushed the trigger. "Last chance," he said, voice low. The knife came up. That was enough. Elias fired once, the crack deafening in night. The man dropped, blood dark in the dust. Chaos exploded. A second lunged. Elias pivoted, slammed the revolver but across his skull. A third grabbed at Lien. She screamed, struggling, the man's grip cruel on her arm. May snatched a rock from the ground, swung with desperate strength, smashing it into his temple. He staggered, releasing Lien. Elias shot him before he could recover. The fourth cursed, slashed wild with his knife. Elias caught his wrist, twisted hard until bone cracked, then drove the man to the ground. A final blow silenced him. Breath rasped loud in the sudden quiet. Smoke curled from the barrel of Elias's revolver. The women clung together, eyes wide. Blood darkened the dust at their feet, for men lying broken under the stars. Elias wiped the revolver clean on his coat. His jaw was set, though his eyes flicked to May with something like surprise. She met his gaze, still holding the rock, knuckles white. For the first time, her mask slipped, and he saw the fire burning behind her calm. Fear, yes, but something harder too. A will to fight, to survive. They buried the bodies shallow, the desert's answer to wasted men. Elias returned to the fire, poured coffee, and watched the women huddled close. Lien leaned against May's shoulder, trembling still. May sat straight, eyes fixed on flames. Neither spoke. The night stretched on, the stars cold. Elias finally broke the silence. "You're running from something." May didn't answer. Her hand smoothed Lien's hair, her face unreadable. Elias studied her, the question heavy on his tongue, but he let it fall. Whatever truth she carried, she wasn't ready to speak it. Not yet. He leaned back, revolver resting near. The fire crackled low. His eyes narrowed, the unease gnawing at him sharper now. He had bought 2 women's freedom with gold coins. But as the night closed in, Elias knew in his gut he had bought something else too, something he could neither measure nor yet name. "I thought I had bought their freedom," he muttered to the dark, voice scarcely more than breath. "I didn't know I had also bought their secret." The trail stretched before them like a scar, across the land, cutting through plains baked hard by the summer sun. Days passed in a blur of dust and silence, broken only by the steady thud of hooves and the rattle of gear. Elias rode with his hat pulled low, eyes always scanning the horizon, while May and Lien followed on foot, their dresses torn further with each mile. He'd offered the saddle more than once, but May refused, shaking her head with that quiet pride he was learning was stitched into her bones. So instead he taught Lien to ride, lifting her onto the gelding's back, and walking beside her while she clutched the horn with white knuckles, her laughter bubbling out in rare bursts that softened even May's guarded expression. Nights fell cool, the stars spilling endless across the black. Around the fire, the sisters worked in silence, May cooking what little they had while Lien pressed close against her side. Elias tried for talk once or twice, but May gave little in return, her words clipped, her eyes cast downward as though every question was a pry into wounds she refused to show. Yet, in the hush of those evenings, he caught her studying him in flickers, measuring, weighing, before turning back to the flames. It was on the 4th day that the land turned against them. The river they needed to cross lay swollen with recent rains, its waters brown and foaming, pulling debris down from mountains. Elias eyed the current, jaw tight. "We'll have to ford it," he said. "No bridge within 20 miles. Lien's eyes widened, her small hands gripping May's sleeve. The girl had never crossed water deeper than her ankles. Elias waded in first, the horse snorting, resisting, until he clucked softly and led it forward. The water climbed, tugging at his legs. "Come on," he called. May entered, one arm around Lien, steadying her. The river surged, dragging at their skirts, sucking at their feet. A log hurtled past, nearly striking them. Lien screamed, clinging tighter. May's face showed no fear, only grim focus, her strength a shield for her sister. Halfway across, the horse balked, hooves sliding. Elias cursed, pulling hard, his muscles straining as the current nearly took the animal down. He shoved at its flank, forcing it forward inch by inch until at last they stumbled onto the far bank, soaked and shivering. Elias dropped to his knees, chest heaving. Lien sobbed against May's shoulder, trembling with cold and terror. May smoothed her sister's hair, whispering words in a tongue Elias couldn't follow. When she looked up, her dark eyes met his, and for the first time, something passed between them. An acknowledgement not of gratitude, but of shared survival. That night, as they dried their clothes by the fire, Elias caught, May's gaze lingering, Not soft, not yielding, but less guarded than before. He said nothing, only handed her his blanket when the chill deepened. She accepted it without a word. 2 nights later, the wolves came. They heard the howls first, distant, carried on the wind. Elias's hand went to his colt, his eyes narrowing into the dark. The sound grew closer, circling. Then came the glint of eyes, dozens flickering between the mesquite. The horse stamped and snorted, restless. Lien whimpered, clutching May's sleeve so tight her knuckles whitened. "They're hungry," Elias muttered. He threw more wood on the fire, the flames leaping high. Shadows lunged at the edge of light, gray forms shifting. Then the first wolf darted in, teeth flashing. Elias fired, the shot cracking the night wide open. The beast yelped and fell, but the pack surged closer, drawn by blood and fury. Another lunged for the horse. Elias spun, fired again. May grabbed a burning branch from the fire, swinging it with wild determination. She drove one back, the flames searing its fur. Another wolf leapt toward Lien. The girl screamed. May moved faster than thought, dropping the torch to snatch a knife from Elias's saddle. She stabbed upward, burying the blade deep in the beast's throat. Hot blood sprayed across her face as it collapsed at her feet. Elias fired again and again, each shot measured, his body steady though the pack pressed hard. At last the surviving wolves slunk back into the shadows, their howls fading into distance. Smoke curled from the barrel of his revolver, and in the flickering light he saw May standing over the dead wolf, chest heaving, the knife still in her grip. Lien clung to her, sobbing, but May's eyes fixed on Elias. There was no fear in them now, only fire. When the camp quieted, Elias sat by the flames, reloading his revolver with steady hands. May knelt opposite, cleaning the knife with slow, deliberate strokes. Her face was unreadable, but her hands shook once, just once, before stilling. Elias studied her, a question forming on his tongue. "Why did you buy us?" she asked suddenly, voice low. The words struck like a bullet. Elias looked up, his hand pausing. The truth rose, heavy. "I don't know," he said at last. "Maybe guilt. Maybe redemption. Maybe because I couldn't stand one more damn thing being taken by men who don't deserve it." May's eyes searched his, but she said nothing more. She returned to her task, the knife flashing in the firelight. The trail pressed on, harder now. Food grew scarce. Dust storms rolled across the plains, choking their throats, stinging their eyes. Once they passed a wagon burned to its bones, bodies lying stiff in the dirt, stripped by scavengers. Lien turned her face into May's shoulder, refusing to look. Elias said nothing, though the sight churned old memories, fields littered with soldiers, eyes open to a sky that offered no comfort. It was 3 days later when they met the preacher. He rode up slow from the south, a lanky man in a black coat, dust heavy on his shoulders, hat shadowing his face. He carried no weapon Elias could see, only a Bible strapped to his saddle. His smile was thin, his eyes sharper than his words. "Evenin'," he drawled, reining in beside them. "Hard trail you're on. Harder for womenfolk." His gaze lingered on May and Lien, a weight that made Lien shrink behind her sister. May met his look without flinching, but Elias saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. The preacher tipped his hat. "You headin' west? Dangerous country that way. Folks go missing. Families wiped clean." "We'll manage," Elias said flat, his hand resting on the colt. The preacher's smile thinned further. "They always say that, until they don't." His eyes flicked again to the women. "You take care, mister. Strays have a way of drawing wolves, and I don't mean the four-legged kind." With that he rode on, dust curling behind him. Elias watched until he was a speck against the horizon, unease burning in his gut. When he turned, May and Lien were pale, their silence heavy as stone. That night they kept no fire. Elias sat awake, revolver across his knees, while the sisters huddled close. He felt their fear as keenly as his own breath, though he didn't yet know its name. It was past midnight when May spoke. "You should know," she whispered. Her voice barely carried, yet it struck like thunder. Elias turned, the moonlight painting her face in silver. Lien slept against her shoulder, unaware. May's eyes held his, dark pools glistening. Her lips trembled once before she forced the words out. We were not slaves. Not in the way you think. We belonged to a settler family. They took us after they accused me. Elias's breath caught. Accused you of what? Her voice broke, but she did not look away. Of killing their patriarch. He came to me drunk in the night. Her throat closed. She swallowed, forcing strength. I fought him. He fell. The family said it was murder. They wanted to hang me. We ran before they could. The fireless night pressed close around them, heavy with silence. Elias's hand stilled on the revolver. His mind spun through the pieces, her defiance, her fear, the preacher's knowing smile. It fit now. The settlers would not rest. They would hunt until blood paid for blood. May's whisper was sharp as a blade. You didn't just buy us, Elias. You bought a war. The words sank deep, colder than the desert night, leaving him frozen as the truth settled heavy on his shoulders. The days after May's confession carried a different weight. Every sound in the night sharpened, every shadow stretched longer. Elias kept his revolver close, his hand never far from the worn grip. May moved with her usual silence, but the fire in her eyes burned fiercer now, no longer hidden behind walls of caution. Lien, sensing the shift, clung tighter than before, her laughter gone, replaced by wide-eyed glances over her shoulder. The land grew harsher as they pressed west. Rolling plains gave way to canyons carved deep by time, the sun beating down so fierce the air shimmered like a forge. Elias's horse stumbled often, thirsty and worn. He pushed them onward, but unease coiled in his chest. He knew how men hunted, relentless patient. They'd follow tracks, sniff out trails, circle until their prey had nowhere left to run. On the morning of the 6th day, he spotted dust on the horizon. A low cloud, too steady to be wind, rising where the earth should have lain still. Riders, at least 6, maybe more. His jaw tightened. The family had come. We ride hard, Elias said, voice flat. He boosted Lien onto the horse, swung into the saddle, and reached a hand down for May. She hesitated, her pride flickering, then grasped his arm and climbed up behind him. Together they pressed forward, the gelding straining under the weight, but pushing on, driven by Elias's firm hand and the urgency burning through him. All that day, the dust followed, sometimes closer, sometimes faint but never gone. When night fell, Elias led them into a canyon, hoping the rocks might mask their trail. They ate in silence, nerves raw. Elias sat apart, eyes fixed on the narrow opening. They won't stop, May said quietly. Her face glowed faint in the starlight, shadows deepening the lines of exhaustion. They'll hunt us until he's avenged. Elias met her gaze. And did you kill him? Her silence stretched, broken only by the wind sighing through the canyon walls. Finally, she whispered, I did, because he would have taken everything from me. I'd do it again. Her voice did not tremble. Elias looked at her a long moment, then nodded once. Then we make our stand when we have to. At dawn, the riders closed in. Elias heard the echo of hooves before he saw them, the sound rolling off canyon walls like thunder. He cursed under his breath. Up, he said, grabbing the horse's reins. They rode hard through winding rock until the path narrowed into a choke point, cliffs rising sheer on either side. It was the worst place they could be, and the only place left. Shouts rang out behind them. Gunfire cracked, bullets sparking off stone. Elias spurred the gelding forward, but the canyon twisted into a dead end, a wall of rock towering above them. He reined in hard, the horse rearing, hooves striking air. Dust clouded around them as he wheeled to face the narrow path they'd come from. They'll pin us here, May hissed, eyes darting to the cliffs. Elias scanned quick. Loose rock, scattered boulders. High ground above, but too steep to climb in time. No escape, only fight. He swung down, pulling May and Lien with him. He shoved the reins into Lien's hands. Keep low. Don't move until I say. The girl's eyes brimmed with terror. Elias! Do it. He snapped, sharper than he meant. Then softer, "Trust me." The riders came in fast, 7 of them now, rifles raised, faces twisted with vengeance. Their leader, a thick-set man with a bristling beard, reined forward. His eyes burned as he leveled a rifle. "You took what's ours," he spat. "Hand him over, cowboy, and maybe we'll leave you a grave instead of coyote bones." Elias stepped forward, revolver loose in his hand. His voice carried hard and steady. "They ain't yours. Not now, not ever." The man's snarl cracked into laughter. He raised his hand. Gunfire exploded. The canyon erupted with chaos. Elias fired first, his shot slamming the leader back in the saddle, blood spraying. The horse screamed, throwing the man to the ground. May grabbed Elias's spare revolver from the saddle and fired wild, the shot grazing another rider's arm. The man cursed, wheeled his horse, and charged. Bullets sparked off rock, chips flying. Elias dropped behind a boulder, firing quick, measured shots. One rider fell, another cried out, clutching his chest. Lien shrieked as a stray bullet struck stone inches from her. May pulled her down, shielding her with her own body, then rose with the revolver steady. Her shot struck true this time, dropping a rider clean from his saddle. The canyon stank of gunpowder and blood. Horses screamed. Men shouted, echoes crashing like thunder between the cliffs. Elias's ears rang, his chest heaving. A bullet seared across his arm, hot pain burning deep. He gritted his teeth, fired again, and watched another enemy tumble. But still they came, for remained, circling, firing down. Elias ducked behind cover, reloading with shaking hands. May knelt beside him, her face pale, jaw clenched. "They won't stop," she said. "Not unless we finish it here." He looked at her, seeing the fire that had carried her through wolves and rivers, through every mile of dust. She wasn't the frightened figure from the auction block. She was steel now, tempered by survival. He nodded once. "Then we finish it." Together, they rose, guns barking in unison. The canyon blazed with muzzle flashes. A rider fell screaming, his horse bolting wild. Another charged close. Elias stepped out, firing point-blank, the blast hurling the man from the saddle. A third lunged at May, knife raised. She ducked low, drove her shoulder into his chest, and Elias's bullet caught him before the blade could fall. At last, silence. Smoke hung thick in the air. Bodies sprawled across the dirt, horses stamping nervously. Elias staggered, blood running hot from his arm. He leaned against the boulder, breath ragged. May stood over him, revolver still steady, eyes searching the shadows. Then came a sound, a groan. The leader, shot, but not dead, dragging himself upright. His face twisted with rage, blood slick across his beard. He raised a pistol, with shaking hands, eyes burning on May. "You'll hang," he spat. "I'll see you." Elias stepped forward, placing himself between them. The leader's finger tightened on the trigger. Elias fired first. The man fell back, his pistol clattering to the stone, his eyes wide in shock before glazing over for good. Silence reclaimed the canyon. Only the horse's harsh breaths and Lien's soft sobs broke the stillness. Elias lowered his revolver, the weight of it heavy in his hand. He turned, blood running down his sleeve, his legs threatening to give. May was there, catching his arm, holding him steady. Their eyes locked, words unnecessary. Lien rushed forward, burying her face against Elias's chest. "You saved us," she whispered, voice muffled by tears. He looked down at her, then at May. For a moment, something like peace stirred in his chest. But it was fleeting. He knew the truth. They had survived one battle, but the frontier would never run out of wolves. They buried the bodies shallow, the canyon earth quick to reclaim what was spilled on its floor. When it was done, Elias leaned on his saddle, weary, pain burning in his arm. May stood close, her hand brushing his once before pulling back. She looked at him not with gratitude, but with recognition, a bond forged in fire and blood. As dusk fell, they rode west again, the canyon fading behind them. Elias's mind churned with the weight of choice. He could have handed them over, could have walked away, spared himself blood and pain. But looking at Lien's weary smile, at May's unyielding strength, he knew he would have done it all again. That night, under a sky blazing with stars, Elias sat by the fire, the women asleep close by. His arm ached, his body weary. But his spirit felt something it hadn't in years. Purpose? He stared into the flames, the memory of the auction, the jeers, the gavels striking. He thought of the war, of men bought and sold by fate, and he whispered to the night, "I thought I'd bought freedom with a handful of coins. What I really bought was a chance to do one good thing before the frontier swallows me whole." The fire crackled, sparks rising into the endless dark. Somewhere far off, a coyote called. Elias leaned back, eyes heavy but heart steady. The trail still waited. The fight wasn't over. But he had chosen his side, and he'd see it through, no matter how long the dust stretched before him.